नमस्कार, मेरा नाम रवि गुप्ता है और मैं सीईओ हूँ इलेट्स टेक्नो मीडिया प्राइवेट लिमिटेड का। हम लोग पिछले 16 सालों से एक मैगजीन निकालते आए हैं जिसका नाम है डिजिटल लर्निंग, जो इनोवेशन इन द एजुकेशन इकोसिस्टम पर मैगजीन है, जो इंडिया और एशिया की अकेली और पहली मैगजीन है इस विषय पे। और 16 वर्षों से हर महीने ये निरंतर निकल रही है। और हम लोग पूरे देश में 50 से अधिक शहरों में वर्कशॉप्स और कॉन्फ्रेंसेस एजुकेशन इनोवेशन भी कर चुके हैं, और भारत के बाहर दुबई, बहरीन, थाईलैंड, मलेशिया, बांग्लादेश, श्रीलंका, लंदन, डेनवर, यूएसए और कई और देशों में हम लोग एजुकेशन इनोवेशन पे कॉन्फ्रेंसेस कर चुके हैं। हम लोग ऑनलाइन वेबिनार्स हम लोग कर रहे हैं, और हम लोग उसमें अलग अलग राज्यों के जो स्कूल लीडर्स, हायर एजुकेशन लीडर्स, स्कूल सेक्रेटरीज, हायर एजुकेशन सेक्रेटरीज और सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट के जो हायर एजुकेशन और स्कूल ऑफिशियल्स को हम लोग अपने वेबिनार में अब तक ला चुके हैं। उसी श्रृंखला में आज हमें गर्व है कि हमारे साथ डॉक्टर मनीष कुमार, जो एमडी एंड सीईओ है एनएसडीसी के, एनएसडीसी नेशनल स्किल डेवलपमेंट कॉर्पोरेशन, जो भारत सरकार की एक प्रमुख संस्था है जो स्किल डेवलपमेंट पे फोकस कर रही है। तो बहुत बहुत स्वागत है डॉक्टर मनीष जी, आप हमारे कार्यक्रम में आए। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद और नमस्कार।
नमस्कार रवि जी।
सर, मैं आपसे चूंकि ये जो कार्यक्रम है लाइव फेसबुक पर प्रसारित हो रहा है, इलेट्स के और डिजिटल लर्निंग के बहुत सारे हैंडल्स पे, जिसपे हजारों लोग देख रहे हैं, और काफी लोग एनएसडीसी के बारे में अच्छे से जानते हैं, पर कुछ लोग ऐसे भी होंगे जो नए हैं। तो उनके लिए अगर एक एनएसडीसी का विजन और मिशन क्या है और क्यों इस संस्था की स्थापना हुई और क्या उसके उद्देश्य हैं, अगर उसके बारे में बताएंगे तो लोगों की थोड़ी जानकारी बढ़ेगी।
ठीक है, ओके। नेशनल स्किल डेवलपमेंट कॉर्पोरेशन, इसको 2008-2009 के लगभग इसकी स्थापना हुई थी। डिस्कशन 2008 में स्टार्ट हुई थी, 2009 तक ये ऑपरेशनल हुई थी। और उसकी ऑब्जेक्टिव जो थी वो ये था कि इंडिया एक डेमोग्राफिक डिवाइडेंड की तरफ बढ़ रहा था, और उस समय चूंकि यूथ की पॉपुलेशन काफ़ी बड़ी होने वाली थी, स्टार्ट हो रही थी, तो स्किल एक बहुत महत्वपूर्ण चीज़ माना गया, क्योंकि किसी भी कंट्री जब ये डेमोग्राफिक डिवाइडेंड वाली पॉइंट पे पहुंचता है, करीब 40 साल की पीरियड होती है, डिफरेंट देशों का डिफरेंट टाइम में ये आती है। हमारे भारत में 2005 में आई, 2050 के लगभग खत्म होगी। तो इसमें अगर प्रोडक्टिव वर्कफोर्स हम क्रिएट कर सकें तो उससे जो है कंट्री की जीडीपी मल्टीप्लाई हो जाएगी। यही बेसिक फैक्टर रहती है जिसके लिए स्किल को प्रमोट किया जाता है। और आप देखेंगे, अगर साउथ कोरिया इस सब के एग्जांपल अगर लेंगे तो 2000 उनका 1950 में उस तरह की पॉइंट आई थी, 2000 तक जब उनकी खत्म हुई तो वो 38 टाइम्स उनकी जो है पर कैपिटा इनकम मल्टीप्लाई हो चुकी थी। उस तरह से इंडिया की भी ये पोजीशन हुई थी और स्थापना किया गया था नेशनल स्किल डेवलपमेंट कॉर्पोरेशन। और बहुत सारे और भी बाद में सरकार ने 2014 और बाद में भी मंत्रालय बनी, और ज़्यादा जो है स्किल के ऊपर प्रेशर, एक तरह से इनिशिएटिव लिया गया। और हमारी कोशिश ये रहती है कि भारत सरकार की जो मेन मुद्दा रहता है स्किल इंडिया, उसका इम्प्लीमेंटेशन और उसके साथ जो इंडस्ट्री की कनेक्ट होती है, वो इंडस्ट्री कनेक्ट किस तरह बनाया जाए, ये दोनों चीज़ों की जो है हम लोग मदद करते हैं और सरकार के साथ मिल के करते हैं। हम लोग में 49% ओनरशिप सरकार की है, 51% करीब 10 चैम्बर्स ऑफ कॉमर्स है, वो हमें ओन करते हैं। और ये एक तरह से प्राइवेट और पब्लिक की भागीदारी है, दोनों को मिला के संस्था बनी हुई।
ये बताएं डॉक्टर मनीष जी की अभी एनएसडीसी का करंट फोकस एरिया क्या क्या है, और किन किन राज्यों पे फोकस है, किन किन स्किल्स पे फोकस है, किन किन ऑब्जेक्टिव्स पे अभी फोकस जो है चल रहा है।
ठीक है, तो ये अगर हम NSDC का एक इकोसिस्टम के हिसाब से देखें तो हमारी जो मेन एम्फेसिस रही थी शुरुआत से वो ये था कि स्किलिंग की कैपेसिटी बनाया जाए देश में। उसके लिए भारत सरकार की तरफ से एक इन्वेस्टमेंट मैनेजमेंट एग्रीमेंट के माध्यम से हमें कुछ पैसा भी दिया गया था ताकि हम लोन देके प्राइवेट सेक्टर के तरफ से अच्छे ट्रेनिंग इंस्टीट्यूशन खड़े कर सकें। और करीब हम लोगों के पास 400 फंडेड पार्टनर है, 200 नॉन फंडेड पार्टनर, करीब 600-650 के लगभग में है जो पार्टनर्स हमारे हैं, जिन्होंने ओवर टाइम करीब 11,000 सेंटर्स वो क्रिएट किए हैं, जिसमें से 3,000 मोबाइल सेंटर्स हैं, बाकी फिक्स सेंटर्स हैं। इसकी कैपेसिटी, एनुअल कैपेसिटी स्किल करने की करीब 50 लाख है। 50 लाख लोग को ये स्किल करा सकते हैं। करीब 2,400 जॉब रोल्स जो हम बोलते हैं, मतलब जो जिसकी डिमांड मार्केट में है, उसको हम लोगों ने फिर क्रिएट भी किया है ये करीब 10 साल के टाइम में। और इन जो ये 2,400 के जो कोर्सेज बता रहा हूँ, ये 37 डिफरेंट सेक्टर्स के हैं। जैसा कुछ ज्वेलरी वाले सेक्टर के हैं, कुछ मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेक्टर के हो सकते हैं, कुछ एविएशन के हो सकते हैं, कुछ हेल्थ केयर के हैं, कुछ टूरिज्म के हैं। इस तरह से IT ITS में, एग्रीकल्चर पे भी है। तो इस तरह से बहुत सारे जो सेक्टर्स हैं उनमें जो है हम लोगों ने कोर्सेज क्रिएट किए। साथ साथ में जो गवर्नमेंट के फ्लैगशिप प्रोग्राम है, जिसे प्राइम मिनिस्टर्स PMKVY बोलते हैं, प्राइम मिनिस्टर्स कौशल विकास योजना, उसको भी हम लोग इम्प्लीमेंट करते हैं। जो सेंट्रल कंपोनेंट है, स्टेट कंपोनेंट स्टेट गवर्नमेंट करती है, और जो सेंट्रल कंपोनेंट है वो हम लोग करते हैं। और उस पर भी करीब पिछले अगर 3 साल में देखें तो करीब 75 लाख लोगों का या तो रिकॉग्निशन ऑफ प्रायर लर्निंग हुई है या शॉर्ट टर्म ट्रेनिंग हुई है। मोस्टली हम शॉर्ट टर्म ट्रेनिंग पे रहते हैं, जो हमारे ट्रेनिंग पार्टनर है, कुछ लोग लॉन्ग टर्म ट्रेनिंग भी करते हैं। तो ये बेसिक एनवायरनमेंट जो है उसके इनिशिएशन हम लोगों ने किया था। फिर मंत्रालय बनी तो मंत्रालय के डायरेक्शन पे हम लोग ओवरऑल जो है सिस्टम अपने चलाते हैं, और उसी हिसाब से जैसे सरकार डिसीजन लेती है उसी हिसाब से उसको हम लोग इम्प्रूव करते जाते हैं।
Some of the audience is asking if we can also talk in English, so I will also ask some questions in English. Sir, how is like NSDC structured? Like how you work with the states, how you work with your training partners, and what is the organizational arrangement, like how it functions?
So NSDC is run by a board. The chairman of the board is Mr. A.M. Nayak, who is the chairman of Larsen & Toubro. And then we have various chambers of commerce having representatives within the board that we have, like Mr. Arunanda is representing CII, and like that we have from FICCI and Mr. Sahane, and we have CREDAI present with us, Mr. Thacker. So the James and Jewelry Council, Mr. Pramod Agarwal. So that's one part of it. We also have 3 Government of India nominee in that, Joint Secretary MSME, then Joint Secretary in the Ministry of Skill Development, and Additional Chief Secretary from Government of Gujarat. So that's like the basic constitution. When it comes to our relationship with training partner, as I said, there are 2-3 types of training partner that we have. One is the market-based training partner that we have, somebody whom we have given loan, and they are the ones who have created capacity as per an agreement with us on what they will achieve, what they will accomplish. And accomplishment will have 2 parts. One is what they will accomplish in terms of finances so that they can repay us back this loan. And the second is there are certain social indicators that they must achieve. So we monitor them for that. And that's a relationship of both, the business transaction of anybody whom you might give loan, as well as the social indicators that the agency is supposed to achieve. The second type which we have is Prime Minister's Kaushal Vikas Yojana, where we select training partner following a process which government has prescribed to us. And this is more of a project-based relationship, and our relationship there is entirely, in a way, focused on PMKVY guidelines. We have a huge electronic platform through which we do that work, because it's working throughout the country is quite a complex business. So we have very least manual contact with the training partners, excepting when we go for inspection. We have third-party inspector who go and do inspections. So that's broadly how we are connected. And then there are a variety of other means. For example, we have posted one person in each of the state at the moment. And obviously that's very thin, but that does give us some bit of know-how about what is happening in the state, and the state also comes to know about us. So there is an interrelationship on that. Because we have 37 different sectors in which we work, for each sector, there is a sector skill council that has been created by NSDC. And these are again manned by very senior people from the industry with a professional CEO running it. So each of the industry is connected to NSDC through the sector skill council. And we come to know what are the different jobs that might be emerging in the market, what is the new, what is the demand for labor that's occurring in different parts of India. So those are kind of information that we managed to get through the sector skill council. We put all of it together, share it with government, and then plan ourselves for the next year accordingly. So I just try to give you a glimpse of what we do. But we of course work with different ministries also. We help different ministries run their program. Our portal is used by different ministries, by different state governments. We also help send people from India outside. Our partners actually teach Japanese language and send people to Japan. We have almost 600 different centers where people are trained for going abroad, and nearly 40,000 people go abroad every year through that network that we have created. So that's broadly, I'm giving you a bit of a glimpse of different things.
So, what are the major achievements of like NSDC till date, if you can exemplify?
So over time, we have created almost, as I said, 2.5 crore skilled people within the country. There is a better appreciation of skills within the country now. The value that skill brings is better understood because I think of a lot of work that NSDC has done. The structure that is needed for skilling, which is both the intellectual structure, which is what is called the framework through which you are going to teach people qualification packs, national occupation standards. These are technical things, but for every job role that you have, whether you are teaching a mason in Nagaland or teaching a mason in Kerala, there are competencies which should be common. And what is that competency? We have defined that competency. And then how should that competency be assessed? We have defined a process, how that should be assessed. We have created the infrastructure through which both can happen. The teaching can happen as well as assessment can happen. So there's a level of standardization which has come over. The most important part of it being that this standardization has to be acceptable to the industry. And therefore, whatever we do, we actually ask the industry through the Sector Skill Council. And it is on that basis we create things. We don't create it just because we felt that it should be in a particular way. So it's not just a pure intellectual exercise. It's an exercise where intellectual capacity is mixed up with what is the demand in the industry. So both of it is talking to each other, and that's how we co-create what we do. So I'm just giving you an example of how we operate. That's broadly some idea.
Sir, what is the situation of employability of the people who are getting trained in skills?
Yeah, so this is an interesting thing, and we have been actually doing some analytical study to understand what happens when people get skilled. Do they get jobs? Do they don't get jobs? So I'm not talking of the current period, which is a bit of a crisis, but we have been doing our own analytics at the back end. Very interesting observations we have found. The best program we have found in the government, actually, the one which is financed by government, is recognition of prior learning. So there in India, although we say that only 3 or 4% of Indians is skilled, which is true that they are formally skilled, only 3 to 4%. But in reality, 42% of India is informally skilled because they have been doing a job for a long time. So if you look at the definition of skills from the global scale, these guys are already skilled. The only problem is nobody has gone out to recognize this skill. So Government of India for the first time put that program in. And we were trying to check what really happens to a person who gets formally skilled. So one of the most powerful things which we found was, firstly, the bargaining capacity of a person whom you have recognized for their skill, that increases. And there is almost like 25% jump in the wages of such people in average after about 6 months' time. Second most important thing, I believe, is the self-worth of that person, his own feeling about himself, that goes up almost like 80%. His confidence or her confidence in themselves actually increases drastically. So a lot of positive things which comes in, and I can cite you a specific case of Jaipur rugs. where actually in Rajasthan, females who are part of that Jaipur rug chain, and which is sold maybe in New York, eventually when it's a finished product. But it actually starts from a village. And when I was visiting that village, I found, a lady actually explaining to me that in the first time in her life, she's actually attending a class in the recognition of prior learning. And she says that the only certificate she has in her life is this one. And she's like, what, 45, 50, something like that. So the pleasure that she was showing, just because of the fact that she could get a certificate, and also the realization that what she does has a whole value chain, it reaches as far as New York, is something which was mind-boggling for her. That really enthused her. Similarly, the short-term training that we do, we have found that there is a 15% wage differential between people whom we skill compared to someone who doesn't get skilled but still gets a job. A 15% differential, which implies that if a person who is new and is not skilled joins a company, gets about 8,000. A person who is skilled is given 9,000. So there's a per month I'm talking about. So it's like 12,000 rupee extra per year. And that for a poor man is quite a bit of money. So skilling actually is getting you quite a bit. And what I found from our analytics, and this back of the envelope calculation, we want a third party to do it, that for every 1 rupee that you invest, you actually end up getting 4 rupee in return. Of which 2 rupee goes to the individual who got skilled, 2 rupee goes to the industry because the productivity is increased. So this is the net present value. It's a social cost benefit analysis I'm talking about. So that's the gain which occurs to society. And therefore, the great need that we continue to actually push towards skills in a bigger way.
So have you looked at linking the skill program with the school and the higher education system and also with the ITIs? So are there any linkages between these?
Oh, yes. I mean, we work in about almost, I think, 7,000 schools. And we nearly touch about 5 lakh children every year. There are 26 different job roles on which they are skilled by our training partner. I think, given the size and scale of India, more has to be done. And there is, I think, a great desire from both MHRD and also from Ministry of Skill Development to do more about it. So it's like a work in progress. The policy, the new education policy itself, is a draft stage, but it does talk about skills in a big way. So, and then we have also brought in some very innovative models. So, for example, the Kunskapsskolan model from Sweden on how you do skilling. In a very experiential way. That's something which we have brought in Haryana and is doing quite well. So there are new ways of doing skills, some lessons from Finland that we want to bring in. So that's where we are. But I think you picked up a very important part that school needs to be well integrated to skills going forward.
Just for the benefit of our audience, what exactly, how you collaborate with schools and what exactly you do with the schools?
So it's like at the moment it's a MHRD program and it's run through state government. The state government takes our help in identifying who are the good training partners. So let's say in a school, they decide that they're going to run 4 different types of skill program. Then they take our assistance in understanding that which are the best training partner that we have who could actually set up training centers there. And then students could actually take those, and in many cases they also count. So you may not take your regular class, you might decide to do a skill class. So that's the manner in which I think things are happening. And this could be related to IT, this could be related to carpentry. It could depend. I mean, there are, as I said, 26 different trades. In today's world, carpentry is very sophisticated, actually. And even I was surprised. We usually have in our mindset a carpenter that we might have seen in a village. But today's carpentry is very different. And one of the most paid person in the world, perhaps, is the person who does underground welding. Although we have an image of welding which is very different. So underwater welding is one of the highest paying job. And if you are somebody who speaks Japanese language and has one of these kind of additional talents, then I think you are really, really, I mean, exotic and would be high in demand. So I think the world is moving much towards skills and embedding skills into what we do in schools and connecting them to jobs and realization that the way the world is changing, having job-specific skills, I think is critical for future. And we need to move in that direction in schools.
What's the vision for next 2 to 3 years for NSDC? What all new initiatives are being planned?
So one is, we strengthen what we are doing at the moment. So I think one of the core things that we have been focusing on is improving quality. Because when you do work in a country as vast as India, there would be, places where things go well and places where things don't go well. So the challenge is, how do you ensure that the lowest common denominator is high enough? That's where we focus. So a very heavy focus on quality, which implies that every training partner that we have, we go very deep into their capabilities. In fact, the way of accreditation in affiliation with us is fairly complex, and actually ensures that we know so much about them that they can't really do mischief if they wanted to, and if they did, we can catch them quickly. So that's one part. Is we focus on training of trainer, because only as good as the trainer is that the student will learn. So therefore, there's a need for having high quality training of trainer. Thirdly, also using technology, because the world is changing, and bringing in jobs that are relevant for the future, bringing in things which unleashes the capability of a lot of women, for example, who are at home, are very capable but have dropped out from workforce. We often say that India's labor force, is declining. That's because 96% of women who are in labor force are, 23% are only working, and of the remaining, there's a huge number of people who have actually dropped out. So how do you get them back into work using, let's say, technology platforms? So those are areas where we want to focus on. One more additional area is entrepreneurship, because we believe that apart from employment, and you might skill people and get them employed, we also need to get people into entrepreneurship. And when I talk of entrepreneurship, I don't mean the bigger ones. I basically mean nano entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs in villages, entrepreneurs who are needing very small amount of money, but and they're doing business which are highly locally relevant. So nano entrepreneurs, as we call them, are very micro entrepreneurs. That's what we want to focus on. We did a few pilots, and they have been quite successful.
Great. What is the impact of COVID-19 you are seeing from the skill sector perspective?
So for the moment, I think, like everything else, we have had to stall the skilling process, because physically it is not possible for people to meet. We do have platform. We do have online courses. We have actually what we call eSkill India platform. And there are 400 different courses out there. And these 400 courses are almost like 4.67 lakh minutes. It's a huge one. It's taught in 11 different languages. So therefore, if you want to learn something in Malayalam, you have things in Malayalam too. So it's fairly vast. And you got an app actually, if you can actually download from Google Play Store, and you can play it on your mobile also. It's fairly, in that sense, quite fungible. So we have tried to ensure that while things slows down because of the fact that people can't meet, on the other hand, platforms which are available, if you could use them to keep on learning whatever one could or whatever one is interested in. So that's where we are at the moment.
So are there any linkages of NSDC with the ITI and the higher education system also?
ITI is in the NSDC. Both of them work closely with Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. So there are lots of commonness, including, for example, the apprenticeship thing that we do in a common portal. So there are lots of discussion that happens. We are, I think, talking very regularly, at least several times a month, in the meeting that Secretary convenes. DGT is also there, Director General of Training. I'm also there. So there's a lot of discussion which happens. The long-term training and the short-term training, how do they get integrated? The ministry is working quite a bit on that, and particularly on the issue of credits, so that you could map out what do you mean when you do short-term training, and how is that connected to long-term training. So those kind of work, NCVET has been set up by Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. I think that's 1 or 2 years more of work, but those are issues which the ministry is grappling with and will resolve. It's fairly focused on it.
Excellent. Sir, there are questions on your screen, and it would be a good idea if you can take some questions and see the relevant ones and address them.
Okay, so they're quite a large number. So you want to pick out something?
You can check out the relevant ones. Like there are.
I think I'll be biased, right?
so let me ask you then.
Yeah, you ask me so that people should not feel I'm trying to avoid some question. It's not like that.
So let me ask you. So there is a question by Mansoor Lari. Does NSDC promote and support private incubators and startup accelerators?
I lost you.
Does NSDC promotes and supports private incubators and startup accelerators?
Not really. We don't do that. If you're working on skills specifically, something which is related to skill, we do have financing for innovation. So there is a part of NSDC which does financing, which is again a loan that we do for any innovation that is relating to skills. We have done that in the past. So that's the only part, but we don't do other things because there are other parts of the government which actually does that, and our mandate is not there for that purpose.
And there is a question by Rajesh Kumar Yadav that there is a big loss for all PPs or candidates. What is the plan and strategy to enroll remaining target of reallocation which hazard due to lockdown? If any possibility to extend date of enrollment for this remaining target?
Yeah, so I got you. So on that, see this, I think it's been a matter of concern to us also. We also realize that in a business cycle, it's very important to have predictability of what is the business like for a training partner, particularly if it is going to be a private sector training partner, because you have invested, and having invested, then you would want to achieve your outcome and also ensure that there is a return to whatever, a fair value of return to whatever you might have invested. I think there has been a bit of issues here. One is, I think, the COVID complication, which has also arisen lately. And prior to that, as I think I saw in one question, and very rightly so, was some of the issues relating to our own skill management system that we had. And, we had given it to new vendor. It took a bit of time. It's stable now, but there was a bit of, I think, disruption out there. So 2-3 unfortunate things which has come together. And that has, I think, led to difficulties for training partners. I keep talking to the Association of Training Partners, and I fully realize the difficulty that they face. From our side, what we have done, 2-3 things which I'll explain. One is to those training partners who might face liquidity crunch. We have actually given to those training partners a line of credits so that they can access that, and they ensure that they can survive through this difficult period that all industry are facing. And we were pretty fast in doing that. Secondly, some of them who have to pay us back loan, we have given them moratorium, and for 2 quarters actually, we have given them moratorium, which ensures that they don't become defaulters and can actually keep moving forward without fear. In the meantime, I'm fully aware that the ministry is also very sympathetic to this particular aspect, and I'm aware that Secretary has been talking to the right people in the government to see how funds could come and how we could ensure that the system can be rebooted. But we have to understand that this is the whole corona issue is a very big problem for the country as a whole, and therefore the government will have to decide how to allocate resource, looking at this particular aspect in mind. So how much resource will it really have is something which we'll know only later. But I just want to assure that we are putting the facts on the table. And I'm also trusting that whoever the government takes the call would do it in the best interest of the country, because eventually, with a limited resource, you have to decide where do you put it, and sometimes you have to take hard decisions. And this is unfortunately one of those times when a hard decision might be needed.
Sir, there is a question by Kuldeep asking about when will PMKY 3.0 launch will happen.
From the side of NSDC, we have completed everything that is required for that purpose. We have the draft guidelines for that. The note is there with the ministry. It has prepared of its own. I think, as I said again, this will be a matter of resource estimation, and would probably require at least a month before clarity occurs, because at the moment you're locked down. I don't think so. The government would want to preserve resources for whatever challenge COVID might present to the country, and part of that, as they solve it, then this issue will also come up at that point. Some call will be taken. Preparedness, I can tell you that we are prepared for that. So that's how we are.
There is a question by Amit Bhola. He's asking how can we become a trainer from NSDC? Is there any exam for this?
A trainer, okay. So that trainer is hired by the private partner that runs the business. We don't hire trainer from our side. We have a portal that's called Taxila. So if you go to our website, you'll get that portal where we have the names of many trainers, almost 20,000, 30,000, who might have got trained through our SSE ecosystem, are certified, and therefore are the ones who are actually running these training centers. So you should follow the pathway that is given in that Taxila portal. You need to connect with the skilled training partners, and then ask them their needs, and then perhaps they will. We have provided guidelines on what is the minimum qualification for different job roles. As I said, there are 2,400 job roles. Each of them will have different qualification requirement. So whether you are qualified or not, that's the estimation which they do. How much will they pay, etc., is a private conversation between you and the training partner. That's how it works.
Deepak Garg is asking, what are the next year guidelines for RPL projects?
So RPL would be, starting the same time as the PMKVY, regular PMKVY. The guidelines, I think, will be more towards the industry-based, the employer-led training RPL. That is what was, as they would remember, was something which worked the best, and was also, I think, for a country like India, where I said 42% are informally skilled. If you want to scale up, it implies that you will have to use the employers, and that's how you can scale up. So that's the model which is likely to be followed in future too.
Manoj is asking, is NSDC thinking of any online courses to be launched, considering all challenges with rural network infrastructure, web-friendly, user-friendly, etc.?
Yes, so as I mentioned, that there are already courses, 400 courses which are online at the moment. Of them, there would be at least 40 of them which will be PMKVY courses in a way. I mean, if you put them all together, then they constitute whatever is required as per NSQF, National Skill Qualification Framework, for 44 different courses of PMKVY. We have not run it as a PMKVY course because of the difficulty that we will encounter if you have to do, if you have to do counting of attendance and all that kind of thing, because it is not a learning management information system. It is more a knowledge sharing platform. That's all. So for learning, I don't think you'll have a difficulty. For being counted as PMKVY, that requires a bit more work, and I think also requires regulatory clearances from government. And then we can maybe put it up as a LMIS. But I think what he picked up, and I think for the future is very important, that many of the courses that we do through PMKVY, wherever it is possible, we should do it online. And that's where the future is moving. And there are things, for example, banking and financial services. There is a demand for insurance agents lately, simply because COVID actually has led to demand for insurance agents across the country. So if these courses are to be done, then doing it in online platform makes sense and directly linked to employment, which the employer are willing to give at this point. So that's for the future, and we are mindful of that.
There is a question from Northeast, Chetu. The question is that what is NSDC planning to develop a skill university in Northeast, and is there any possibility of skill university in convergence with the short-term training?
I have noticed some brilliant institutes, made by Government of Assam in near Guwahati, and it's really good. Some of the best infrastructure out there. I've also found in Nagaland some of our good training partners doing fantastic job, particularly training air hostesses and getting them jobs, cruise liners, tourism side, and people getting into various airlines within India. So there are quite a number of examples of very good partners also. So far as Skill University is concerned, I think that's a regulatory issue. Will have to be regulated by the state government and by the central government. So I would like to comment on that, but over time, as things mature, these things automatically come in, and we have at the moment in country about 6 or 7 of them. It's still evolving in my view. It is some of the best one I have seen is Centurion University. It's evolved very well, and actually is very granular in terms of how it operates right at the field level in Odisha. But there are others too, like Vishwakarma, which is coming up in Haryana. Is something which we have to see for the future. So, I think this is a matter which people should take up with the state government, and we'll be more than happy to support from our side with technical knowledge.
Sir, in the chat box, there are some questions which I'm taking. There is a question by Ravi Kumar. He's saying that we are the industry-run skill development center. How to register for RPL, and also please give NSDC Andhra Pradesh representative contact details.
Okay, so somebody from my office must be listening to you, and I'm quite sure they'll get back to you with the contact detail of that person in Andhra Pradesh. And you wanted to know how to get into RPL. So, recognition of prior learning, we have a separate division within NSDC which deals with it. Please go to our website, get the details. If you don't get it, just send an email to me. I will ensure that it is forwarded to that concerned person. We will get you connected and make you understand how that works.
There is a question from Raj Kumar from Gurgaon. He's asking that which sector we need to focus during the coming year based on the employability projection.
Sector we should focus for the coming year,
yes,
based on employability. So I think this is where I would like to advise that don't look at pure employability at all, only employability. One of the important things that we do is counseling, to let a person know that what is your strength. And I'm saying this because we have noticed, let's say a person, because he or she feels that healthcare is going to get a lot of money. That's usually what is seen. So let us get ourselves trained in healthcare. Eventually, it turns out that the person, when he or she is working with an old man or an old woman, is not able to withstand the pressure of that particular job role. So what we have realized is it is necessary for a person to check beforehand what is it in your nature that will allow you to do a particular work well. So I'll give you one suggestion. There is one app which is called Knack, KNSCK. You can actually download it from Google Play Store. It's a game which you have to play. There are 2 games actually. You have to play it for about 20 minutes. When you play the game, it decomposes your personality into 40, 50 different traits. So for example, it'll measure what is your empathy level. So if your empathy level is low, in a scale of 100, your empathy level is only 20, then you should never go into healthcare. You should find out what is suitable for your context. And then I think you should go there because that's what you'll enjoy. So that is, from the counseling perspective. So far as potential perspective is concerned, I think healthcare obviously will be very high in demand post-COVID, because we can understand why that will be quite important. There would be also, I think, quite a bit of demand in 2-3 other sectors. One is, I think, high demand in things relating to insurance, So that's something which will grow. There would also be a surge at some point in retail, because although things are going down at the moment, but as government puts in more money and incentivizes things, the retail part will come up very strongly, and there'll be a huge demand for retail at some point. There would also be, interestingly, demand in agriculture sector, because a lot of people who might have gone out would actually return, and they would therefore would want to get into agriculture again. So there would be quite a bit of, I think, demand in the agriculture sector. So it's a question of where you are, and you'll have to anticipate, maybe keep your eyes and ears open. And some analytics that we do, which we keep posting in our website too. So that will also give you a clue.
So, there is a question by Dr. Dinesh Harkut. I am Dr. D.G. Harkut from Professor Ram Meghe College of Engineering, Mandhera. We are running the program in 4 domains since last 2 years. Out of our experience, we would like to bring to your kind notice that at government level, it should be promoted among industry and needs some organized efforts for employment of these trained students in industry.
So I want to tell you about 2 initiatives that we have recently taken to connect this demand and supply. We have created what we call skill management information system, where essentially it is run by one of our partners called Better Place, based in Bangalore. Essentially, what happens is the demand from industry is put in one particular portal, and then from the supply side, who are the people who have got skilled in various things, are put on the other. And there is an algorithm which they run, which actually provides to the employer immediate information about who are the best people that they can actually get in the particular trade that they have vacancy for. So there is a quick mix and match which happens very, very fast. And the industry is relying on that in a bigger way. That's something which is been developed very recently. It'll come up in a bigger way now. Particularly post-COVID, we want to bring it up in a bigger way. The second thing which we have done is partnered with Google. And Google also, in Google Pay, if you go there, you'll find a particular link for jobs. If you go to the search and you go for jobs. And that's another thing which you could use well, because what happens with Google Pay is, since they have a large base of people who use their facility, they are aware of vacancies across the country, and anybody who registers with them in that particular portal actually gets very quick information about where are those vacancies. So I think these are 2 things which we could do. The second one is called Korma with Google. That's something which they had used in Indonesia and Bangladesh, and we have adapted it to the context of India as of now. For those who are actually interested also in doing things maybe another 1 year down the line, they're looking for good jobs, I will very strongly suggest that if you can learn Japanese and you have one skill, you got plenty of opportunity in Japan. And it takes about 6 to 9 months to learn Japanese. If you are from Tamil Nadu, it takes you 6 months, because strangely there is a connect between Tamil and Japanese. I don't know how, but I found that people who speak Tamil language actually pick up Japanese very, very fast. And then others will pick it up in about 9 months' time. And once you have that, and then you have some skills, the demand for people from India who are skilled and want to work in Japan is fairly high. So I think that's something which you should also keep in mind as opportunity.
Sir, there is a question by Dr. Archana. Does NSDC help financially in setting up centers in colleges if we want to start such skill centers in my college?
Yes, so what we do is we connect you to partners that we have, and our partners actually help in setting them up, because our partners, as I mentioned, 650 of them, they have the know-how how to do that, and these are spread across India. So whichever part of India you are in, we will be able to get you connected to someone who is really good. We also have a benchmarking of our training partners, so we know who is the best, who is second best, who is third best, so we can let you know all that information. And you can choose who is the partner you would like to go with.
Sir, there is a question on as per the norms, most of the course durations are with 3 to 4 months and less than that. How a training can attain such a good skill with less time?
So I think this short-term training is not about becoming an expert. The short-term training is more to expose you that what will you encounter if you were to go to, let's say, in the shop and become a salesman. What will you encounter? What is it? What is it that makes a good salesman? What will an employer expect from you? So those basic knowledge is what you acquire. The confidence with which you need to speak, the way you need to modulate your voice, the way you'll receive people, the way you'll explain things. There is a structured way, maybe 10 competencies which the employer expects out of you. That is what you learn. You want to become an expert, you have to go and work there. I don't think so you become an expert only by being in a classroom for 3 months. That's not how it's going to be. See, there are two advantages of this. One is when, particularly for the employer, when somebody comes in, the employer has an understanding that, okay, this person is not going to mess up entirely. At least he or she knows the basics, fundamentals. So therefore, if it is equipment, he's not going to do something totally stupid. I mean, they would have perhaps handled this equipment, and then therefore they would know. So there is a kind of comfort level which comes from the employer side. On the side of the candidate, there is a comfort about what is it that is expected out of him. That is known. If you are unstructured and you have no clue and you still land up there, you will learn, but you will learn through trial and error. You'll make a lot of mistakes, you'll break a lot of things, and still learn. I mean, those who are recognition of prior learning today might have actually, in the first 1 to 3 years of their life, messed up quite a bit, and they still learned eventually. So I think it shortens the period of your learning. It creates structure in your brain on what to expect, how to behave, and therefore it's helpful if you follow it for 3-4 months.
Sir, there is a question by Shushant Adhikari. He's like saying that when we reach out to the industry for the placement of the trainee, many of the industry doesn't believe the SSC course and curriculum being imparted in this short-term training. I feel that there is still a gap within the LSTC, SSC, and the industry.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement to make. I don't think so. All SSC, all the industry necessarily takes from NSTC. That's also true. And I think it's a work in progress. As I said, it's a very vast country. 1.3 billion is the population of whole of Africa. And so therefore, we should understand that we are both a country as well as a continent. So there would be parts of us which may not be believing that this helps, and it takes time to convince them. Maybe some part there are some problem which we also have. I think we have to look into that also. So I in generic sense, what I can tell you is, if you are facing this difficulty in specific area, please get in touch with us. We'll want to help you, and we'll want to do what is good for industry. There's no point skilling in things which the industry doesn't find the value. It's a waste of time.
Sir, there is a question that any virtual labs infrastructure establishing plan up to training level so that hard skills or vocational skills can be imparted and minimum basic level to make trainees feel of a particular skill.
I couldn't get this question.
They are requesting any plans to establish a virtual labs infrastructure for the trainees.
Virtual labs?
Yes.
So basically virtual skilling, is it that, or is model labs? Is it talking about model labs? If you want model, if it is virtual, see, the time for virtual has come now, and we actually have worked on virtual on few of the things. So for example, we used virtual lab for training on Swachh Bharat, where you could actually construct a toilet pit, and there's part of the mason training, but there was no brick or mortar. All that you had to wear was basically goggles. You had to wear that, and then you could actually begin creating a toilet pan, and building up what you call the Swachh Bharat toilet design. So that's some of the things which we have done in the past. It's not come out in a big way because it's expensive, for anybody to set up. Also, I think there are some issues yet on that. For example, if you have to wear one of those glasses, the maximum that you can really endure is about 5 minutes to 10 minutes. After that, you feel a little giddy. So therefore, how much can you do will depend a bit on how technology evolves. But we have been actually following up. and something which we had also placed in demo in our own office, where you could actually virtually go in the middle of a room. We can create a rig machine using some of our training partners' equipments, and not real equipment, virtual equipments. And then you could actually do various kind of activity, and at the end of it, come to know whether you are doing it properly or not properly. So there are virtual things which are coming up. This whole business of e-learning is actually taking a big turn now, and Elliot Massey, when he had used this word e-learning in 1999 in Disneyland, he probably meant something very different from what we see today. And today it has reached a very different level. He, of course, continues to be in the same business. So you are talking of future, and it's fantastic to be hearing what you think about it.
Sir, there is a question by Nahid Khan. He's asking that as per the office memorandum released by the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, last date for enrollment of candidates under CSSM component of PMKVY 2016-20 for only Northeast region has been extended till 31st May 2020. However, the Skill India portal has disabled the batch creation option and edit batch options after 31st March 2020. Request you to kindly look into this. This is the question.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we'll look into that. So I think whatever the government has committed, the government will live by it. That's what it has always done. And we will be fully supporting you also.
And sir, someone is asking about in case of e-learning platform takes place because physical training is not possible, how will the assessment and certification take place? Is there any place for assessment agency?
Yeah, so this whole assessment issue is also, one of the area on which the government has been deeply concerned. How could it be strengthened? And I think some of the job roles that we have today are amenable to online assessment, some of them, but not all. So we will be learning from the good partners that we have, and we will try to see how the current system of assessment can be improved in the next version of PMKVY. So this is definitely on the cards. And the NCVET, which has been formed, is also actually deeply reflecting on reforming assessment. There's been a lot of discussion within NSDC, a lot of papers that we have created, that we have shared with government on various aspects of assessment and how in different sectors things are going right and some sectors is not going so well, and how things need to be improved. So sectorally, I think we'll move on that and strengthen it.
Sir, there is a question from Bala Murali. Where are job opportunities available for a candidate after he or she completes diploma in IT or CITS training course successfully for the post of instructor or trainer? I am asking this about states like Tamil Nadu, where notification for JTO in ITI has not been released since 2014. So
I would suggest, just send an email with your CV. We will put you into the LMIS that I was talking of, SMIS, Skill Management Information System. We'll put you into that, and the matching will occur based on your qualification and your competencies. So if you can, just email us your resume, that will be very helpful.
And I think many of the questions are like similar. I think the issue about lockdown, issue about employability of the trainees, and issues about.
So in general, you see, I mean, I would like to say, that we have a challenge at hand. I think we are doing great by everybody, obeying the lockdown. We have been able to contain Corona quite a bit in India compared to many other parts of the country. I think we should always be optimistic. We should see this time as difficult one, but we have to rise to the challenge of difficulties that we have. Be optimistic because these things don't last forever, and therefore, and whenever it ends, there are new opportunities that will come. So I think you should focus on opportunity, look a little future, and be prepared for the future opportunity that comes, both for training partner as well as for candidate. And the immediate hardship, I think this is one of the most trying times, which perhaps happens only once in 100 years, and we have the unfortunate situation of actually going through it. So we must, I think, be able to manage ourselves well in this time and look for the future where things will work out better for us. India is very vibrant as an economy, and I don't think so we are going down anyway. I personally see that there are lots of opportunity. A lot of things will come to India, and I think the demand for Indian both manpower as well as Indian goods is only going to go up. So therefore, maybe one year down the line, we would be more than happy for where the things are.
Thanks for spreading some positivity and inspiring everyone, Dr. Manish Kumarji. And in the end, I want to ask you your suggestions for us at Digital Learning Magazine and ILETS. We have been organizing conferences on education, also in skill, and you have been our esteemed speaker. And I think you also have seen our magazine and online portal. So your suggestion about our efforts on spreading innovation in the education sector.
I mean, I firstly greatly appreciate what you're doing, and I've been following you. As you remembered, we met in Jharkhand, almost 2-3 years back. And I'm aware that you have done things within India, you've done things outside India also. I'm aware of that and done it very well. And I think everywhere you have gone, India's name has also gone out, in a positive way. So I think, firstly, I think it's very important for magazines, to bring out not just the anxiety of people, but the positive sides, particularly for a country like India, which actually is doing quite well, despite all the difficulty that might be there in a country as vast as ours. So I would encourage you to keep doing that in a bigger way.